Morning, Darren.
It's good to have you back. How are you today? It's an honest answer. Everybody here, should you want to leave? Good morning. See all these smiling faces out there? It's early. Thank you for joining us this morning. Got a lot of staff here. We've got a lot to go through today. We do have a tradition here in our council meetings, that is we open in prayer and the pledge. David Bills is going to open us in prayer and we'll do the pledge.
Thank you, Mayor. Lord God, we just give thanks for the day. We give thanks that we can gather together and continue to conduct administration over the city that you've entrusted to us. We pray, God, that you'd give us wisdom and guidance in the decisions made even yet this morning and throughout the day. Again, we give thanks for all the blessings. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Councilman Bills. Roll call.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Jingula.
Here.
Bills.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Here.
Haverfield.
Here.
Griffin.
Here.
All present.
As we get started this morning, we have two quick business items before we move into our planned agenda, and they're both approval of alcohol licenses that were asked for some research. And so the first one is an action item to approve an alcohol license for Dos Caminos Mexican Restaurant located at 908 3rd Street South for on-premise beer, wine, and liquor by the drink. Do we have any comments on that? Councilwoman? No? We're good. Okay. Then I would stand for a motion.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Yes?
So Natalie, did you get your questions on both of these renewals
I
taken care
did,
of?
yes.
Okay,
And confirmed by Todd.
all right, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, roll call.
Jingula.
Yes.
Bills.
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
Griffin.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Item 1.2 is an action item that's to approve the alcohol license renewal for Sushi located at 16734 North Marketplace Boulevard for an on-premise beer and wine.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Jingula.
Yes.
Bills.
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
Griffin.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Item 1.3 on the agenda is the opportunity to have a presentation. It's so good to see you. Thank you for being here, Art, on our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. So good morning, Darren. It's exciting. A lot of work has gone into this.
Yes, good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm Darren Johnson, Parks and Recreation Director. This is hopefully the final presentation of our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We have a group behind us with Parks and Recreation and other city staff that put a lot of work into this. I know Art has met with a lot of the city leaders. Some of you may be newer and maybe miss that opportunity, but I think that Art Thatcher from Barry Dunn has done just a fantastic job leading this process, and so he'll walk us through it and give the presentation. So thank you, Art.
Great. Thank you, Darren. Mayor, members of council, it's good to see you again.
Thank you for the opportunity. As Darren said, this is a little over a year's worth of work and an engagement with both staff as well as the community. And so I'm here today to kind of give you the final presentation and kind of walk you through it. I want to kind of give you some background first, and then we'll kind of get into the meat of the document. And so, as you may remember, our strategic planning process really is a four-stage process. We started out with our initial kickoff with staff and leaders, and then we did our information gathering. Came back and did our findings and visioning sessions, drafted the recommendations and actions, and now we're here at the final plan. And then the next step will be the implementation. And so just to give you a little context of the community profile that we were working with, using the Compass data, we looked at your historical and projected growth, and you can see that you're growing quickly, but you're kind of slowing down a little bit in the next 5 years between 23 and 27. What's most interesting is looking at at your age groupings, and so the majority of your population is in that 25 to 55 age range, and you can see there's over the next 5 years they're anticipating an increase in that 25 to 34 age group. So that was one of the things that we heard through the engagement process, was making sure that we didn't leave that group out of the programming and the planning process. And so we've engaged them through this process. So some relevant trends. We use Esri as for most of our trends and those things. And so Esri doesn't track youth, but it does track adults. And so looking at adult exercise activities, you can see walking for exercise is the number one here in Nampa as well as in Idaho. So we look at sports participation. You can see golf is the number one, and you have two fabulous golf courses that are operated, and followed by basketball, and then soccer and some of the other sports. So pickleball is not one of those things that is that's tracked yet by Esri, and so using the Sports and Fitness Industry Association, looking at the growth over the last 4 years, one of the things to note is pickleball is the fastest growing racket sport in the country, 35% growth in that time period. However, it's 10 million users less than current tennis players. And so one of the things as we talk to communities is we look at, we want to make sure that we don't discount the tennis community because there is a large group there, and they had a 6% growth. So making sure that we're balancing that. And in fact, the USTA, the Tennis Association, and USA Pickleball over the last 2 years have formed a task group to make sure that they're working together in the growth of both of those racket sports. So just to kind of keep that in context. We also were asked to kind of look at the economic impact, and we were very fortunate. NRPA had just published the impact of parks. And so kind of looking at some of the statistics locally, the Parks and Recreation, local Parks and Rec, contributes about $2.1 billion to economic activity. It's created 1.1 million jobs and more than $63 billion from operations and capital. Here in the state of Idaho, it's just under 4,000 employees. The spending is $1.43 million in labor and salaries. That added value of $219 million, and then your total economic impact of about $88 million in economic impact. And then the outdoor impact as well in that $563 million. So we did a lot of public engagement. We did stakeholder interviews with the leadership, with you as council, with department heads, as well as with the school district. We held focus groups, and then we did a staff SWOT and engaged the SWOT in the master planning process. And so what we heard from those meetings, we asked about what the strengths were, and so the Recreation Center came out. It was really the greatest strength that we heard from all of the groups, and from my work around the country. It is you would never know the age of that facility based on its condition and its use. It is very well used and in very good condition. And so looking at your inclusive special events, you do a great job with special events, the relationship with the community, your staff, and your youth sports. We also asked about desired amenities. What would you like to see? And the top thing was another recreation center in the north part of Nampa. The facility is so well used that people would like to see another one within the northern part of the community. Additional trails and pathways, which goes along with that walking activity for adults. Trail connectivity, shade structures and parks, and then adventure and destination playgrounds. Those top ones. We asked about activities, recreational activities. And again, this goes back to available space. Increased availability for current classes and programs within the existing portfolio. Low impact activities, family-friendly special events, and additional older adult classes, and then visual arts and workshops. So we asked about those people that participated, of everything that they talked about, what would be their top priorities. And so maintenance and updating of your existing facilities is number one, and we typically see that around the country as one of the top two in pretty much everything, is maintaining what you currently have before you begin to build and invest in new. Trails and pathway connectivity, shade at parks, pathways, and fields, an indoor facility in North Nampa, and then health and inclusiveness and community safety. So from there, we developed a survey, and we did a mailed survey, and then we also did an an online survey. So we had 944 total participants in the survey, giving us about just under a 7% margin of error. And so as we looked at it, so part of it, we divided the city into areas, and so that we could track and see where the responses were coming from. You can see that the greatest responses came from Area 5, and then Area 6 to follow that. But we still had a good representation from 1, 2, and 3 in the invitation survey. Area 4 was the lowest of those represented. And so we asked about their length of time living here in Nampa, and so you can see, which is unusual for most of the surveys that we do, the largest majority had been here between 1 and 5 years. Typically, we see the 11 to 20 or the over 20 years as the greatest. So you had a lot of response from new residents, but you also had a good response from those more long-term residents, both in the invitation as well as the open link. And so we asked about frequency of use, and you can see the most frequently used are your city parks, then your trails and pathways, the recreation center, others. And so some of those others are your disc golf course, the dog park, and your pickleball courts, and then your youth recreation and sports programs were those top 5 in usage. Excuse me. So we asked about current use. So when you do go to these facilities, what do you use? What are the things that you use most? And so restrooms are the number one thing that they indicated. And this was the start of a new trend that I have seen in surveys over the past year, 18 months, is that restrooms tend to be one of the top things that people are using when they go to a facility, whether it's a park or whether it's a recreation center. And so one of the things that we'll hear is upgrading your restrooms or adding restrooms to parks and facilities. And I think it's a lot of families are going out and a lot of older adults are going out. And so while they're there, it's just a facility that they may need to use instead of having to go home or go somewhere out of the facility. Also, walking, jogging, pedestrian pathways are one of the big things that are being used. We know that if you put a perimeter pathway in a park, that it increases the use of that park by about 70%. Statistics have shown that. Picnic shelters, use of the picnic shelters, going to the playground, open space and turf, and then the swimming pool are the things that are most frequently used when they go to the parks. So we asked about how do you get to the park? How do you get to the facility? And 75% of the respondents from the survey use their motor vehicle. They drive there. 13% walk, and another 12% ride their bikes. And then we also asked about what is their preferred method, and driving was still their preferred method. And I think a lot of that is the recreation center is drivable. It's not a walkable facility, and so that was one of the top facilities that was used. And so what would increase your use? We asked, what would increase their use? Additional facilities and amenities, additional lighting in parks, trails, and at facilities, lower pricing for your user fees, better condition and maintenance of your parks and facilities, and then additional classes and program offerings. So we asked about communication, and what was the preferred way of communication? Your activity guide, emails, and social media are those kind of top three, with emails from the city and your activity guide as the top two. One of the things that we find is that people like the activity guide because it's kind of that coffee table book that they can look at, they can flip through and circle classes and things that they want to take, but then they want to be able to register online. They want to be able to go to their computer with the book and register for classes online or reserve their picnic shelter or something in that way. And so we asked about top three needs. And so improved trails and pathway connectivity, more parks, adding more parks, additional shade and picnic shelters, renovation of your existing parks and facilities, additional dog parks, and then another recreation center, kind of be in that top six of your future needs. And so we gave participants $100, and in $5 increments asked them to put them onto these projects that we had heard through the public engagement process. And you can see overwhelmingly Trails and Pathways was the greatest with an average of $12 being spent by the participants there in the invitation survey, followed secondly by the recreation center, dog parks, splash pads, and then a swimming pool. And so, as you remember, we had two of our staff people, Dave and Kaylin, that came. They went around to all the parks. They inventoried your parks. They looked at the level of service. They looked at the condition of those parks and the components within those parks, and put together our inventory and level of service analysis. And so you can see this is a map of all the facilities that they went to. They went to not only your facilities but also the school facilities, and then using the computer and GIS, they looked at all of your HOA facilities that were identified within the community, so that we could really get a good feel for your kind of level of service. And so what we did was we created an atlas. So we did a GIS at each one of your maps. with the boundaries. We inventoried all of the amenities in there, and then we graded each one of those components. We graded them on a scale of 1 to 3, 1 being that it wasn't functioning the way it was designed to function, so it may need to be major repair or may need to be replaced. 2 was that it's functioning the way it was designed, and it may just need some regular TLC. And then 3 was functioning above, so it may be a new piece of playground equipment you've just put in, a new picnic shelter that you've just opened, and those things. And so we've provided that as a staff document, and we've also provided the electronic file for that. So it can be a living document and a living product. So as you're making improvements, it can be updated. So this is just a brief summary of your parks and your facilities that we inventoried. Parks on the left-hand side, and then community facilities, the golf courses, and then the Wilson Springs Pond. And so in total, within your system, you have 231 different components within the system that people can take advantage of, whether that's a basketball court or a perimeter walking trail or a restroom, those things. And so as we look at the system, one of the things is we use the 80-20 rule. And so the 80-20 rule is that is a road, would you let your 8-year-old child or your 80-year-old parent walk across that road by themselves? If you would not, then we consider that to be a pedestrian barrier. And so you can see the grid of pedestrian barriers that are that we identified within the community. And so, one of the things that we needed to look at was, how do we, how can we kind of prevent those barriers, or how do we get access to citizens keeping those barriers in mind? In a lot of studies, you'll find that they'll just do a 1-mile radius around a park, and it doesn't take into effect those barriers. But we look at the barriers because we know kind of they're real and they prevent access. And so, this is the kind of the 3 stages that we looked at. So, with a 10-minute walk, the darker the orange, the more access a person has to recreation. And so you can see in the top left that this is just Nampa Parks. So you can see there are those gray areas are where there's not access to a recreation component. But if we overlay on that the schools, because the schools are also open to the community in the afternoons and on weekends, and so they do provide recreation service. And then if we add in the HOAs, you can see that the darkness becomes, that orange becomes greater. And those hashed lines are where there are, where the HOAs are providing access to amenities within that pedestrian area. And so this is just looking at all of those. You can see, in that 10-minute walk analysis, that you do have coverage. There are some areas that are gray, but as we looked closer at those areas, they're industrial and they're not residential. And so, keeping that in mind as we did the analysis. And so as you look at the walkability, again, that 10-minute walk, you can see that 25% of the population is within the threshold of that 10-minute walk to at least 4 recreation components. And then if we add in the others, if we add in we're HOA only, there's a combination or low service, you can see that 73% of the population has access to a recreation component within a 10-minute walk. Only 27% of the area of the population doesn't have access within that 10-minute walk. So what we did, because the survey respondents had said, that vehicles was their main use of getting. So we looked at a 1-mile radius access to that, and so you can see that reaching 4 components within a 1 mile, 75% of your population now has access within a 1 mile drive to a recreation component. And then if you add in those other, the HOAs and the HOA combined, you can see that only 4% of your population does not have access to 4 recreation components within a 1 mile radius. So good coverage. As we look at, you can see the kind of on the left-hand side how that purple grows and that 75% of your coverage becomes increased. And so looking at all the data and looking at all of that, we kind of looked at what are those recurring themes that we heard through all of those data points. And so pathways and trails connectivity are the community's greatest desire. Continuing to create a connective community through your pathway development, maintenance and updates to your existing parks, facilities, and amenities. The desire for a community center, recreation center in northern Nampa was a great recurring theme. Preserving your open space, finding future locations for parks in underserved areas of the community, developing additional programming, asset management, so looking at your existing portfolio and what are those future additions, continuing with your activity guide, and then your trails, pathway, recreation center. Those are the top 4 areas where the community would be spending money. And so we take all of that, we came back and we did our findings presentation, and we began to develop goals, objectives, and our action tables. And so as we looked at it, we developed the 4 goal areas: continuing to improve your organizational efficiency, maintaining and improving your facilities and amenities, continuing to improve your programs and your service delivery, and then increasing your financial opportunities. And so as we pulled those together and began to look at the action table, we looked at a time frame of short term, so 0 to 3 years, that midterm 4 to 6, and then that long term 7 to 10. And so, as you remember, I came back and kind of did the draft presentation, and we went through the goals. And so goal 1 of continuing to improve your organizational efficiency, maintaining your existing level of service, enhancing and improving your internal communication, maintaining existing quality standards for your facilities and amenities, utilizing technology to improve customer service, that being able to register online, do those things, increasing appropriate partnerships within the community, and staffing appropriately to meet the demands and to maintain your existing quality of service. So then we got to maintaining and improving your facilities and amenities, and this was the largest of the 3 goals when it came to those objectives. So maintaining and improving your existing facilities, expanding your pathway connectivity, adding indoor recreation space, developing new amenities at existing parks, acquiring new land, and that's not necessarily that you have to be the one to buy the land, but as development occurs, making sure that the HOAs are providing parks and amenities within those HOAs as part of that development is one of the initiatives that many communities are using. Improving parking at parks, continuing to monitor your ADA needs within the community. So upgrading your comfort, convenience, and customer service amenities at your facilities and your parks. Creating park identities in existing and new parks. So adding current and future needs, addressing your current and future needs for athletic fields. Consider programming needs when you add new components. What are those opportunities to add or enhance your existing recreation programs? Maintaining the component-based inventory that was created through the master plan, and then develop and maintain an asset management program. And so continuing to improve your programs and service delivery, the main objective there is to continue to address your recreation programming and activity needs of the community, making sure that and there are quite a number of actions underneath this one goal and objective. And then finally, kind of increasing your financial opportunity. So continuing to kind of increase your special event and your activity sponsorships, evaluating your developer impact fee ordinance, making sure that you're keeping that current, pursuing grant and philanthropic opportunities, and then looking at considering a dedicated funding source, either through cost recovery or one of those opportunities. And so, as I said, we took those, and so in the document, you'll see that there are a list of actions underneath those with some capital cost estimates, operating impacts, and then the time frame. And these are just some examples that I pulled out. This was Objective 1.3, maintaining your existing quality standards for facilities. So continuing to improve and upgrade through your capital plan, looking at those low-scoring components from the GRASP Atlas. Using the low-scoring components from the GRASP to develop your asset replacement plan and funding that through your capital improvements plan. And then implement the strategies identified in the NAMPA 2040 Strategic Plan, Chapter 9, Objective 2. And there are a list of those that you identified during the strategic planning process. And then another example that I pulled, Objective 2.3, adding indoor recreation space. Continuing to explore those opportunities to add additional indoor recreation space, either through partnerships, purchase of an existing facility, or construction of a new community center. I know many communities are combining their recreation efforts with libraries and also with schools in that construction, so that there's not the city isn't the only one bearing the kind of that capital cost and that operating. It's been very successful in many communities. Conducting a needs assessment and conceptual plan for a new community center with the priority on the north side of Interstate 84, and then exploring opportunities for additional community space for active adults and seniors. So looking at where those opportunities within the community. And so the last one that I pulled, 3.1, continuing to address recreation programming and activity needs within the community. So looking for those opportunities to expand indoor recreational programs and activities. Again, can you partner with the library? Can you partner with the schools, YMCAs, Boys and Girls Clubs, those things, to look at how you can expand your recreation programming opportunities. Programming areas identified during the planning process, specifically looking at tweens, your teens, your special needs, and your active adults and seniors. And then expanding your summer camp program to 3 or 4 sites to help meet the community's demand as noted in your citywide strategic plan. And so that's the master plan. And then the other part of what we were tasked with doing is providing some conceptual plans for the 2 golf courses and for Lakeview Park. And so that way we worked with a local John Brecken and his staff, a local landscape design firm, to do some conceptual plans. We did a community survey. We added some questions into the community survey specific to the golf courses and to Lakeview. We had workshops in January at each one of the golf courses. We had 37 people at Centennial, at 31 come to Ridgecrest. We also worked with the Golf Advisory Board, and then we held a workshop at the Rec Center for Lakeview Park. We had 30 citizens come and participate in that. We took all of that information and we developed 3 conceptual plans from those. We came back in June and held workshops again and presented those concepts to the community and did some dot voting and got some interest from them. We held again at Centennial and at Ridgecrest, and then we held another one at the Rec Center for Lakeview Park. And so from there, we narrowed it down into one concept. We worked with the staff and And so that concept, we did an online comment. We received 225 comments on the Lakeview Park concept, and so presented that to leadership and then kind of developed some final concepts. And so you can see with Centennial, we, and one of the things that we were tasked with was when we were looking at the concepts and adding additional recreation opportunities, was that we were not to do anything with any of the current existing holes. So the golf course as it currently exists, we didn't do anything with it. We just looked at where there was space within the golf course itself to add some components that could help to kind of increase the use and generate some additional revenue for that. And so we looked at, you can see kind of the blue triangle area, that youth, kind of youth and adult practice and instructional area, using both indoor as well as outdoor. One of the big things that we noted and came out of the process is that the community uses those golf courses a lot for walking. And so, and there are conflicts between golfers and walkers. And so we wanted to kind of look at how could we define some of that walking space so that the community could still walk there, but wouldn't create those conflicts. And so you can see there's some trail connectivity along the canal, and also up along the northern part above the railroad tracks, connecting to existing pathways within that area. And so we also looked at Ridgecrest, and there was definitely more opportunity at Ridgecrest for some other activities. As you can see, kind of from the pictures, there's an opportunity to develop some pickleball there, kind of as an activity that would enhance the use of the golf course. We also looked at other areas. So the kind of the youth golf area, there's over on the would that be the northeast side, looking at that area that could provide itself for mountain biking, as well as some other activities within that area. When we talked with the model airplane group, they're identified as a really large area that they're using, and they said, no, we really are using just a small area. And so gave us the opportunity to look at some other activities within that space. And so kind of how can we look at improving some of the parking, using pervious pavers and those things, so that we weren't creating too much impervious space, surface there. And so this just kind of looks at the two combined, and mostly as you look at the pathway connectivity within those two, and how that comes together. Excuse me. One of the other things we looked at is the old barn, is preserving the old barn, making it an event venue for the community and for the city. And so finally, there was Lakeview Park. This means I've been talking too much. So very briefly, I'll kind of I'll finish up and then kind of take some questions and stuff. So as we looked at Ridgeway, one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that we preserve the nature of the facility, made it more accessible, and that connectivity. So you can see a lot of the activity down on the kind of the southern portion of the park. There's the existing pool. We also found that there's a geothermal spring that's coming out of there, and that there used to be a pool there that was fed by that spring. And so, the opportunity to, swimming was one of those things that we found. So adding an additional swimming pool to supplement the existing pool, kind of re-envisioning and bringing the lake back there, looking at the kind of an amphitheater area, opening up the space, really kind of looking at the existing amenities that are in there. Everybody that I talk to and say Lakeview, they say, oh, the airplane park. And so, how do we, really kind of, show those off? The airplane, the railroad cars, and the farm equipment. How do we kind of put those on the perimeter and really make them, a part of the kind of the walking trail and an educational historic area. And so, it was a real exercise, and the community was really engaged and really interested in maintaining the gardens, as well as kind of increasing the open space for programs and activities, and making it accessible to all the community. And so the final piece is we looked at connectivity, and one of the things that we noted is, and you can see kind of coming right down the middle, kind of this spine, that there's some opportunities with existing pathways and trails to make a connection between the golf courses and downtown, really coming through. And I can't, it's too small for me to read the streets. But coming down the center, and then, which would take you down to Lakeview Park, and then bringing Lakeview from the park down into the downtown, really helping to revitalize that neighborhood, making it walkable between the park and the downtown, and just creating that connectivity through that corridor and connecting to some of those other corridors. And so we've got kind of a chapter in there about that connectivity and how that all works. And so that's it.
That was a lot, but you went through it very well.
Thank you.
That was excellent. Okay, so I think I'd like, council, do you have some questions? Comments or questions? Natalie, I think, you know what, I think we've got several, so let's just go down this way. So Victor, do you want to start?
Yes,
We'll
thank
just
you.
go down the line.
Thank you. Again, thank you for what you've done. And it's been interesting to see how you turned and listed our parks. I talked with you here about 6 months ago when you first started this, and said that geographically, on our level of giving back to the community, the geographic is, are we placed in a good position for people to have good access? And I don't think you've answered that question today. Are we in a good position for that? Access to our parks?
So, yes. As we looked at the level of service, so you can see using that 1 mile access, that 96% of your population has access within 1 mile of 4 recreation components.
I see. Okay, so the another thing is, I want to talk to you about access for a second. Access and using transit. You've mentioned that the rec center and all these parks are available, but is there any kind of opportunities for transit to go take people to these parks and Harvard Center and all that stuff?
That was not something that we studied specifically in this plan. I know that in other communities, they have, the city has invested in trolleys that run in areas to provide transportation, and they, like like you're divided into districts, they do trolleys within those districts that run on a circuit. So it is, I mean, it is something that is, you could work with your transit authority to see if that was something that they would be interested in pursuing in partnership with the city.
Yeah, okay. I'm just wondering about that, because I know that the access to the parks is important. And I just wondered about, like, for the seniors that can't walk, but they want to go to the park. And we don't have one here in the city, not that we need it, but I just wanted to throw that out to you. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you for this. This is amazing. As you work across the country and you're working in other municipalities, and I'm using the wrong term, so forgive me, but are you seeing other communities have kind of like communities within communities where, you know, it's not just your neighborhood that has a little park for the HOA, you know, but rather like an actual Lakeview Park that butts up with homes and then apartments and then an elderly center and then maybe a corner store? Like, are you seeing those around the country? Because I'm thinking, when you're talking about trails and pathways being the greatest need or desire in the community, and I went back and was thinking of like your 8 to 80 rule and how, you know, I wouldn't want my kids, an 8-year-old, riding their bike on the perimeter of, you know, on a busy street of a neighborhood. But I don't know that I just want them on the sidewalks in the neighborhood either. But if they had a space like Orabrandt Park, I don't know if you're familiar, but that big, you know, if I had something that like butt up to that, where I could trust that my kids are just riding there, but then I also have the 80-year-old that's coming out of the, you know, elderly home here on the corner, and they're also accessing that as well. So it also it's not just connectivity in the sense of pathways, but also community, right? So you have them coexisting. Are you seeing that across the country?
So we are seeing a move back towards that. There was a 10, 15-year period where communities were going away from neighborhood parks, which is what you're talking about, to more regional parks. As they kind of moved into the sports tourism realm, and you know, if we put everything in one space and people can get to it, then it reduces our maintenance and those things. But with COVID, what we found, that was people's outlet, was getting outside and walking and trying to find open green space. So a lot of communities are going back to reinvesting in their neighborhood parks. They had neighborhood parks that they had kind of let go to do more with those regional parks. And so investing more in neighborhood parks, looking at opportunities to purchase land within those neighborhoods, as you say, to provide open space for those neighbors and that community. And in other cases, we see where HOAs are, you know, they're not being able to maintain their parks just within the group, and so they're opening up to the community at large. And in a partnership with the locality to help with some of that maintenance and provide additional access to within walking distance for neighbors.
Do you know what that looks like then is it a partnership with the city and the developer where they say, if you give us X amount of land, the city will maintain the park and it won't be HOA, because then we just have these like little pocket HOA, you know, playgrounds that people don't really utilize them because they're not quite functional, but
Right.
What does that partnership usually look like?
Very much like that. It's in lieu of a developer fee. They look at their level of service within their comprehensive plan, their general plan. You know, and I'm just going to use a quick example of 5 acres per 1,000 residents. And so if the development is going to bring in 2,000 residents, then they're asked to provide 10 acres of usable park space and develop that park space. And then once it's developed, then the city would take over the maintenance of that.
Thank you.
So I might comment too. So it's interesting, in the city of Napa, and I'm trying to think, is it 27 parks that we have? Is that right?
Yes,
I
that
think
sounds,
it's around 27 parks, and so, which is interesting to think about that number. Over the course of history in a community, so we used to build those little community parks. That's why we have 27 parks, and they're all over our community, all these little parks. Darren, please correct me if I'm wrong. But then as we're moving forward, especially in the North Nampa that's yet to be developed, our area-specific plans, what we're looking and working with the developers are, and we have some developers working on this, and that is to create master planned areas so that we're master planning in the park space. The challenge that we face is that we have some developers that bought up a lot of ground, and it's small. It's not big tracts, it's smaller. And so then, and we, you know what I'm talking about, where we come in and there's this high density in it, and we require 15% open space, but it isn't quite enough sometimes and isn't that usable. But we have shifted as a city from building all the pocket parks to the open green space, and the HOAs maintaining, and they maintain them, the open green space with the playground. But when you've got these little small pieces, there's a project that we required them to put a little playground and a little open green space, but it isn't very usable, and the playground is so small it's almost laughable. So we just have to, those are things that I think that we as a council are going to need to be talking about. How do we do that? And I do just want to say, I've had several meetings with David Duro with the YMCA, and we've discussed the North Nampa area and partnering with Valley View. We've had a few discussions, but we need to continue to have these discussions, and I know we've included some developers because they're very interested in creating a facility in North Nampa, so then it wouldn't be city-owned. We've got to look at that model. Does the city do it? Do we partner with the Y? Is there a partnership like in Meridian? In Meridian, the city of Meridian, the schools, and the Y all partnered together, and with, I believe it was St. Luke's for a wellness center, and it's all together, and it's tied into a school. It's a great project. And so we've toured that, looked at it.
Yes.
Those are just the considerations that we'll continue to look at as our North Nampa area develops and trying to figure out how to do it. So hopefully that provides a little context.
Mayor,
So, yes.
question in regards to your comments. Are we creating a space for these developers to be able to meet where we're able to go and discuss with them as well as decision makers to be able to say, this is exactly what we would like to see, especially for those of you that are coming before council soon enough? Are they creating that internally? Are they having their own little coffee chats, or are they creating a space where you can meet us at City Hall on this date and let's bring everybody to the table and have this discussion?
Well, I'm going to say yes and no. Yes, in that I know I've met with several developers and we've talked about it. They've met with Rodney, too, to talk about what they're looking at, what they're bringing in. We have some great projects ahead of us that are actually taking all this into consideration. I think that we have some council members here that have also had some discussions. We haven't all come into the room at the same time, and I don't know if that's really the best, actually, because they're not in yet, they're future projects, but I think one of the best things we have done as a city is where we created the area-specific plans so that the developers knew what we were looking for, and those area-specific plans actually do call out the park space and really the whole, what we're looking for. What it takes is a developer that can actually carry a master planned community. So, and there are a few across the Treasure Valley that are outstanding. Again, our greatest challenge is there are small little pieces. It takes somebody going in and buying up all those small little tracts that are available and pulling it in, and it's very costly and very time consuming. There aren't too many people that can do that. And then we deal with what we've been dealing with, where you have smaller tracts, but you can't do as much with them. And so it's not been an easy process. You've got other communities in the Treasure Valley that have a lot of open farm ground, and so they've got like this canvas, blank canvas that they get to develop. Because we're a larger, older city, we've got enclaves and pieces and parts, but we don't have this open canvas that we get to do. North Nampa is that kind of. There's a lot of county subs, too. There's so many county subs in the middle of us, here and there, it makes it really difficult in the planning, but we're working on it. But I think one of the best things we did were our area-specific plans. So, excuse me talking so much, and I don't want to take our time. We've got really 5-10 minutes max, but Councilman Bills.
I'll just pass right
You
now.
have nothing
Yeah.
right now?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we will, I tell you, the key to this is I'm sitting here listening. Great job. We need to, we're not going to be over yet, and we'll keep going down, but this is in some ways a fresh beginning. Because when you look at those goals and then the action plan, the key to this being a good, usable plan, and I think you've got some great action, I really appreciate the research that was done, the collaboration, is what do we do with it? Right? We've got to take it and take action and make decisions based on what's been presented to us. So we've got some work to do. But yes, Councilman Reynolds.
My question, just sitting here thinking about how do we get this to an implementation plan? Do we have a master budget to go with it? As they say that like 98% of all good ideas go by the wayside. And I hate to have all this done and then people just look over it and 10 years later we come back and say, well, we should have done that. There's some great ideas here. It's fantastic. I really like the Ridgecrest drawing of all the amenities that brings in so many different community members and different interests into that one space that we have, that we're very fortunate to have. So anyway, I'd like to see, what the path forward is.
So
We'll be talking about that
Yeah,
too
just to-
shortly. Go ahead.
to answer that very quickly, we did provide staff with a conceptual capital costing for each one of those concept plans, as well as for some of the recommendations within the parks about increasing trails. So like, what the cost per foot of trail would be and some of those things. So we do have, the staff does have those costs. We didn't put it in the document just because it's a 10-year document and it changes so quickly. We found that it's more efficient to give it to them as a staff document that they can refer back to.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes,
Mayor,
yes.
just a couple of quick questions. When you presented the Lakeview Park idea of bringing the water back in to create a pond area, I like that idea. I think the Mason Creek would be the contributing water that would be able to utilize that. So Darren, can you look into that a little bit further for possible, to see if that is a possibility? That's pretty simple because the water's already there underground. During the Arbor Day celebration, I met with Darren and others from Parks and Rec, Cody, to plant some trees. And there's a little pocket park there that's, I don't see listed in the matrix here in the packet. And I saw earlier in your presentation, you had a listing that had about 1,071 or 41 acres listed in that, but that didn't include any school grounds, but just borrowing on the mayor's theme, I'll cut to the chase, the partnering idea. I think if we had to consider not only just the city-owned ground, but possibly the school acreages. I don't see Red Hawk Golf Course listed in this. When we start looking at the full picture of our city limits, basically even the impact area, what ground is not only city ground for parks, but others that are helping to contribute to the quality of life that we have here, that would be useful.
Sure.
In that regard, so I would just point that out
Yeah,
as well.
And some of that you're talking about is in the full grasp document that we did and provided.
But it wasn't in here, was it?
Correct.
It
It's
was
a
not.
staff document, yes.
Yeah,
They have
because
that.
I added up the acreage and it's only 974. So, that didn't even get to the one that you had on the slide, but
Right.
it didn't include the schools, private schools and public schools. So that would be useful for us as we consider the per capita, how many acres per capita that we have that we can really work with. So,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions too, and I'll try and burn through them as quick as I can. And Tony, I'm sure, is ready for these on the back burner. With looking at the plan specifically for Lakeview and for the golf courses, it's tough with the golf courses because we have a season of access that lasts about 4, 5, maybe 6 months if you're crazy like me and like to golf in the rain. With that being said, I try and think about how we can create revenue streams in these spaces, not only to put them on the map and create attraction for Nampa to be able to have folks come all day to pay for the space and then go to the restaurants and just be here. Out of all the things listed in your recommendations, what do you see as the most viable in the sense of year-round use, return on investment, highest quality for outside individuals to come and utilize our spaces on and off season?
So specifically with the golf courses? You know, specifically the training center, that is, you know, is definitely a revenue generator. It's a year-round facility. I think pickleball is another. You know, what we're finding around the country is that many communities are building pickleball facilities on existing facilities at golf courses and other areas, and they're charging a fee. And so there is that, because that way you can reserve specific times, and so you're not just coming as a drop-in. I think those are the two biggest that I would say, you know, and then addressing your parking.
So a follow-up then additionally to that, Mayor, with the training center specifically, have you worked with or seen municipalities implementing golf simulators and having success in that sense, using those, whether it's in the summer and having a driving bay open up and being able to hit some balls, or to go in the wintertime when there's 3 inches of snow and using those as well and paying for those facilities? Have you worked on any projects or seen people implement those?
I've worked on projects where they've been recommended and where they're in the process of doing feasibility studies. They haven't been implemented yet.
Okay.
But they're kind of at that next step. They've done the feasibility study, and they're preparing to go out to bid.
So one of my, and this is more directed just for the group and having Parks and Recreation here as well, I always try and think, what are we going to have, especially with our enterprises, opportunities to really generate revenue? Because at the end of the day, it only benefits the city to have spaces where individuals from other communities want to come and utilize them, and Centennial and Ridgecrest are great areas, but also where we're having that overhead covered through the winter months. And I know there's little overhead because we're not maintaining greens and doing all these things. My point being, I really want to push hard for that youth center or the training center, specifically in the sense of golf simulators, because throughout the valley, there's membership availability, there's opportunity, they're waitlisted. I have a cousin who pays $160 a month for an indoor simulator facility, and he can't even get a space, and he still pays for it, which is crazy to me because I don't get it. But that could be an opportunity where maybe it's a 10-year, 15-year goal. I think we should expedite that because it attracts people to Nampa. There's a market for it. It lets people know, hey, we have something new that we're focusing on. It allows our youth to come be connected with it, and I think it's all around tied up. And I know Tony is a hard hitter for that, and the whole Park and Recs team. So those are just a couple of my thoughts.
Thank you. Those are great thoughts. Just 2 quick comments. So the simulator is going in, is it just one simulator? Just one simulator going in at Centennial, and that is in process now. And then on the pickleball courts, tell me if I'm wrong here, I think we have 6 at Lakeview Park. We have 5 coming in at Ora-Brant, is that correct?
So,
6?
Mayor, we have 6 at Midway Park.
Okay.
We have 6 more coming in at Brant Park.
At Brant.
And then at Lions Park, we have tennis and pickleball, which are multi-use courts. And so that's
And-
at Lions.
Then the golf course, how many in the master plan had we talked about in the master plan out at the golf course?
So that's just conceptual at this
Conceptual.
time. There would be discussion on how many would be put there, whether it would be, enclosed or, so at this time, it's just conceptual.
Yeah, thank you.
And we find that groupings of 6 or 8 are,
The right groupings.
yes.
Okay, thank you. So that's nice to know that we've got 6 now, we've got 6 under construction this summer, I believe, that will be done shortly, and then we'll have the opportunity for additional ones out at the golf courses. Council, what we're going to have to talk about is funding. Obviously, it's all capital funding and those funding priorities, but a couple of things. One, it's going to be, the next project for this group with Parks and Rec is golf. I mean, the whole group is to take this and then look at it and come back with the recommendations. Some of this doesn't cost anything to implement. And so what we'll be looking for is, one, the action that actually follows this. So thank you for working on that and bringing it back. Then if we could send a link to the staff document, the big document that you referenced that has this other, because these files are so big you can't email them, but we could provide a link to that to the council so they could actually view more if they wanted to. Is that correct?
Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah,
we
if you
can
could
get,
send the link out to city council.
Mayor?
Thank you, yes.
And one other thing I asked Todd to look into is what limitations we had as far as commercial development around the golf courses based upon the purchase sale agreement.
We definitely have limitations on anything commercial. If it is recreational, then there's a consideration. It would have to be agreed upon with the state if they would allow us to do that. But if it's recreational, we cannot do anything commercial. No restaurants, nothing like that. But if it were a sports center that is related to golf, right, a golf simulator, that's in fitting with the intent of that property. So I don't think that would be a problem.
Well,
But-
that's just following up on Sebastian's questions as far as ROI, as far as on investment out there and being able to fund other things. We just have limitations at the golf courses is all.
Correct,
So if we
as
had
long
that
as it's not
information.
commercial.
Right.
But if, for example, if we put pickleball in and we decide to charge for that, or if we have a simulator, which we already are working on a simulator, then those are actually in process, so, yeah. And we can expand within our existing facilities, so,
Mayor Kling?
yes.
I just want to mention to you and the council that if you haven't been out to Centennial and looked at the parking lot, it is beautiful. It is so much better. And Tony, if you can just say, good job. There's certainly, there aren't any spots open when you go in, when you go play golf, and that is so good. So, and then the trailer area is coming together as well. What's the ETA for that one?
We're almost done with the parking lot itself, trailer included. The only thing that is left to be built is the interior storage.
So
Right.
Tony is saying that it's almost done and the only thing left is the
Yeah.
material storage.
So it's
Thank
great,
you.
Mayor. Really,
Thank
that was a good project, so thank you. Thank you, Darren. That was.
Sorry, Mayor.
We are out of, you know what, we are out of time, so I'm going to end because we have a really important discussion coming up and thank you, Art, you've done an outstanding job, you and your team, thank you so much.
Thank you very
We
much.
appreciate the work.
These guys did a lot of the work.
Thank you, guys.
They helped us along.
They just aren't done yet, but thank you for what you've done. Now the real work begins.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Mayor, is this an action item where it goes through approval, or?
It says action item, but I don't know, do we need approval on it? Do we accept it with official? Do we want to take action? I guess we could.
Most councils adopt it.
Okay, so this was the intent today, not just a presentation, but the adoption. Okay, here we go.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the master plan as presented today. Thank you so much. Is there any further discussion? Roll call.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Bills.
I abstain.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Griffin.
Yes.
Jingula.
Yes.
Haverfield.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mayor
Thank you,
Kling.
Darren. Yeah.
As a follow-up, maybe for future workshop discussion items, you had mentioned the master plan communities. I think that would be a really good topic. I had a developer in my office yesterday, and that's what I said would be a great opportunity to present to council, maybe in a workshop, as just a presentation of the quality of developments that can happen based upon that approach.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, so we are going to move forward to our next discussion. So we've been looking forward to Elaine, you coming, our Valley Regional Transit presentation with Elaine Clegg. And so come on up. And Mark, are you going to introduce it? Thank you, Mark.
Good morning, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Mark Stoyer, Director of Strategic Initiatives. I'm pleased to have Ms. Elaine Clegg from Valley Regional Transit here. She's going to give a presentation on the services that VRT provides to the city, those that we actually contribute to financially, as well as the many services that they're associated with that we do not contribute to, but are still a great benefit to the city and to this community. I do want to remind the council that we did have a 3-year MOU signed with them last year. This was not a financial commitment of any kind. It was a financial planning tool that basically gave us and VRT an idea of what their budgetary request would be in the next 3 fiscal years. Like we did last year, any financial commitment would be approved during the budget process, and then, of course, it would be a financial agreement as well, committing to that amount. This next fiscal year will be the last time that we see any ARPA financial contribution whatsoever to help the city in their financial contribution. So it's a minimal amount. So the amount for this next fiscal year is quite a bit more than it was last year. And it's staff's recommendation to fill this gap utilizing transportation funds rather than general gov. So with that, I'd like to welcome Elaine Clegg.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, Elaine.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. It's nice to have early morning meetings because you can get a lot done during that day. So thanks for having us. Really excited. Do you forward it, or is there a clicker? Okay, go ahead. So today I'm going to talk to you, give you a big overview, not just of the services that Valley Regional Transit provides, but also other ones that serve Nampa and serve your residents. Also, how the funding works for each of those services, and then a budget request. Reminder of what we talked about last year. Next. So, overview of those services. Next. So Valley Regional Transit provides 3 fixed routes. Actually, there's 4 today that also serve Caldwell. With the change on June 3rd, the 43 will go away. It didn't really serve Nampa anyway, so we don't think it's going to have any impact on you. And in fact, the changes to the 40 and 42, because of the service hours that are now available from the 43, we do think will provide more benefit to Nampa than what you've had before. Then there's, of course, the on-demand area. We're learning more about how to make that more effective. This last year, we've done a lot of tweaks to it, which we're learning ways to make that service work better. And then we have a lot of specialized services. We have Access, which is the paratransit service. It's a federally required service within 3/4 of a mile of any fixed route for persons with disabilities who are unable to access the fixed route because of that disability. We have Beyond Access, which is paid for also with federal money, but a different pot of money called 5310, which serves both persons with disabilities and older adults. That service is mostly done by Metro Community Services in a partnership with Valley Regional Transit. Although Valley Regional Transit, as part of the Beyond Access services, provides trips between counties. So Nampa residents who need to get to Ada County, say to a medical appointment or something other, can use that service. We have Lyft Late Night, which is for lower income workers who qualify, who can get to work or from work on a bus but can't make the other trip because the hours of the bus don't work. And so that Lyft Late Night provides that opportunity for them. That one can be really helpful for service workers who otherwise may not be able to afford to live in Nampa and work wherever it is they work, because they can't get back and forth. Rides to Wellness is subsidized by the health systems, and those are rides for folks who don't qualify for Medicaid, non-emergency medical rides, but still can't pay or can't have access to get to their medical appointments. And so we found that the hospitals recognize that getting them to their appointments actually is more valuable to them than having them miss their appointments, so they help us with that Rides to Wellness. There's a volunteer driver program that's run by Metro Community Services, and VRT also has some. And those are rides that just otherwise wouldn't happen. We're able to subsidize the time and the cost of the fuel and so forth for those volunteer drivers. And then we did have the Nampa Shopper Shuttle, which was supported by the grocery and the health system. We've discontinued it because we found that with Beyond Access and the 150, we can cover those rides otherwise. Next. So what you're seeing now is our new route maps, which are kind of cool. We're very excited about them. So as part of the changes in the system that are happening June 3rd, in addition to changing the routes, we're changing the branding, we're updating all of the bus stops with a new bus stop typology so that they're more visible and we hope easier to use. And as part of that, we have completely redesigned all of the brochures. Within those, we have a lot more information than used to be in the brochures. We think it's more readable, easier to use. We've done some focus groups on those, and people are pretty excited about it. So the Route 40 in 2023, so I'm giving you the 2023 numbers because those are the ones that we have complete, had a lot of passenger miles, 14,000 boardings, 58 boardings a day, and ridership is up 30%. With the changes that'll happen on June 3rd, with the consolidation with the 43, we've streamlined it and focused it, and we think it will actually even be more efficient than it was previously, although it does lose some service area. That service area, though, is picked up by the on-demand system. Next. Route 42 is the one we're particularly excited about. Although ridership is already up 24%, we're adding midday trips to it with the extra hours from the 43. It's rerouted to serve downtown Nampa, which it didn't previously serve, and now there will be all-day service between Nampa, Boise, and Meridian. We're pretty excited about that, and we think that even though the ridership was already up quite a bit on this route, it will be up even more because it will be more reliable and more available all day. Next. The Route 45, which serves the College of Western Idaho and the Idaho Center, has also been changed. Again, ridership was already up on it. We've consolidated with the route that serves just Meridian, and doing that has increased the connections between Nampa, Boise, and Meridian. From College of Western Idaho, you'll be able to access downtown Meridian during the times that it's running. So previously, you were out on Fairview, and we believe that many more trips will be taken with it going downtown. It will also serve Town Square Mall, which it previously didn't, and at Town Square Mall you can get connections, as you can see on the map here, to many other places, as well as downtown Boise, which it previously served. Next. And the Route 150. So previously, the Route 150 was kind of this bubble map, if you all remember it. And you'll see that in a moment. We've consolidated the service area in a way to follow regular roadway boundaries so that it's more clear if you're in or you're out. It's more clear where you need to go to meet it. We had 30,000 boardings last year, 120 daily boardings, and of those, 850 of those riders were unique Nampa residents, and many of them using it very regularly to get to the places that they need to go. 82% of their trips on this service start or end in Nampa. So with this service area simplified and the more regular service on the boulevard into downtown Nampa, we believe there will be more availability for seats on the 150, and the combination of those two, we're pretty confident will increase ridership on both the 40 and 42 as well as the 150. Next. So you can see on this map, this is what the on-demand service used to look like. It was that bubble area. We previously served access or paratransit in all of the area that's in red. With the changes to the 40 and 42, that access service is going to be consolidated into the area that's now in blue, and so that area will go down. However, because of our new Beyond Access service, we're confident that all of the riders who previously used Access will still have availability of service. You can still schedule ahead of time. It's still door-to-door. And the Beyond Access service is free. The Access service is a fare. So all in all, we think that this is going to be a positive thing, even though the Access service area is consolidating quite a bit from what it used to be. The challenge will be making sure we have enough vehicles available for all the boardings. And so as the year goes by, we've seen a big increase in Access rides over the last year, and we'll be watching that closely. And if we need to adjust some of that service into Beyond Access, we'll find ways to do that. We're confident we can do that. So we'll be watching very closely. Next. So here's the Beyond Access service area. So previously there were 5 zones across the 2 counties, and there were 12 service providers. Some of them were senior centers. SHIP was a service provider. Harvest was a service provider. We found that it was not very efficient, both in scheduling the rides and also in the administration of it, because we were paying administration across 12 different organizations rather than one. So we've consolidated it largely into 2 service providers, VRT and Metro Community Services. Metro covers all that area in green, and VRT covers everything in purple, as well as pickups within the green area if they're going outside of the green into Ada County particularly, or northern Canyon County. 58% of the trips previously have started or ended in Nampa. We expect that to continue. Riders, of course, now can travel between counties, and we've seen a big increase recently in that. This service only started in January. Not unusual with a new service and a new way of doing things. The first couple of months we saw a decline in ridership. It's now picking up again. We had a meeting with Metro just yesterday, and they're very excited and happy now about how it's running, how their riders are able to access it, and the flexibility that their riders can now get into Ada County, where previously they couldn't unless there was a volunteer driver available. It's a new service, so I can't promise you that our projections will happen, but our projections are that as we learn how to use this service better, as we tweak it so that people can access it more easily, we'll see an increase in ridership and an efficiency in the use of the dollars that we're putting toward it. You all don't put any dollars toward this, but it provides a lot of rides that serve your residents. The dollars that we're using, the local dollars we're using today, are AAA funding, and this gets me to another sort of common theme, I think, across the state of Idaho. As the state has pulled back or tried to find efficiencies in how they spend their money, there's less money available to some of these other kinds of services. AAA is one, Medicaid is one, Idaho Health and Welfare is one. You'll hear more about that in a minute. And it's about, it's a balloon, so they pulled money back and it pushes out somewhere else. So you have never had to support these services because there's been other money available. As we look forward, we're a little worried that that won't always be the case because of these pullbacks. So that's one of the things I want to put on a watch item that we'd like to have a conversation with all of you about, and what's the best way to support these going forward. We're fine for this year, but it's a balloon. That's all I can say. Pull back one place, it's going to push out somewhere else. And right now, the AAA funding has declined a fair amount, and not knowing what the future of that's going to be, I don't know what the future of this service will be and the need for support of it. So I want to warn you about that because I don't want to play any games with what's coming up. Next. Lift late night. Right now, it's not being as well used in Nampa as it could be. We have a lot of service area in Nampa, so one of the things we'd like to work with you on this next year is getting the word out to these service workers who would qualify from an income level to do this. It's actually a really relatively inexpensive way for them to get back back home or to work in those off hours in those jobs that run in those hours. And we did expand it to cover more of those service jobs along the Overland Corridor. And so that's one area that we think we may pick up riders that would come from Nampa. Next. And by the way, that one is being paid for. Again, you don't contribute to that one. We've found other funding to pay for it. And we think that that's sustainable, at least for the short term. Treasure Valley Transit also provides a lot of rides in Nampa. Most of their rides are paid for with Medicaid, non-emergency medical transport funding that matches $240,000 that VRT contributes to them for those services to happen. As I stated with the Beyond Access, that their funding is declining somewhat. Medicaid is, a little bit tricky, but more importantly, they used to get funding from Idaho Health and Welfare that would help match their vehicle funding. And that was, I think, through WITCO. Again, state has pulled back some of that funding. There's not as much of that funding available. They've got some older vehicles that they're using in Nampa that will need replaced soon. The difference between them and the private non-emergency medical providers, and is Terry here? I don't know if she is. As I've talked to her, is that they provide those accessible rides and the others don't. And so those vehicles do cost more. So I know that you have a request from them to consider helping them with their vehicles. I don't know if that's the right way to go. I do know that, again, that balloon is pushing out, and they're going to have to figure out somewhere to get that match to get those vehicles. The rest of the vehicles will be paid for with federal funding that comes through the state of Idaho, Idaho Transportation Department, through FTA and not through VRT. But it is statewide money. And these are vehicles that are being used in Nampa primarily. And they do provide a lot of rides to folks who really need it. So, next. Rides to Wellness, I mentioned this. Doesn't sound like a lot of rides, but these are people who otherwise aren't going to get to these appointments because they're not eligible for Medicaid, but they can't afford to get there, or they don't have a vehicle or whatever it is. And if they miss these appointments, it ends up costing all of us a lot more money. Ridership is up a lot on this, so our strategy at this point is working with the medical providers to push as many of these rides as are eligible onto our Beyond Access service so that we can reduce the costs here. These rides cost more per ride than the rides that we're providing on Beyond Access. We think we can we're meeting with medical folks and with the providers of these rides. These rides, we contract with private sector services to provide them to find some more efficiencies. But again, this is a very important service, and everyone's committed to keeping it running. Right now, you don't contribute toward it. We're not asking you to, but it does provide very important rides in your service area. Next.
Can I pause and ask a quick question?
Go
Just
ahead.
to clarify, Treasure Valley Transit, those rides are Medicaid covered, and rides to wellness are non. Is that what I'm understanding?
Say that again.
The difference between rides to wellness and Treasure Valley Transit is that rides to wellness are non-Medicaid, so there's no federal funding available for those
Right.
people.
Right.
They don't qualify for Medicaid.
Exactly.
That's why there is a need for rides to
For
wellness.
this
'cause-
separate one, yes.
Okay,
yeah.
because they
so
do
Treasure
not-
Valley Transit does the Medicaid eligible ones.
Okay.
This one is folks that aren't
Okay.
Mayor,
eligible.
to follow up on
Yes.
that question, so both of those entities are partners with VRT?
We provide, yes, Rides to Wellness is a partnership of VRTs with the health systems, and Treasure Valley Transit is a subrecipient of grant funding from VRT to help with the costs of the rides that they provide.
And then the Metro Community Service, is that a VRT service?
They're also a partner with VRT. The difference is they're a contractor with us. We contract with them to provide the rides for Beyond Access, whereas TVT is a subrecipient.
That answers the question of, I see other buses on the road and they're not VRT buses, and so I was questioning what other services are out there. So that's what you're showing us now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
And
you.
then, this may not be the right time, but I'm just sitting here thinking, one of the things that's been a little bit hard to understand is VRT as a whole, and the subrecipients versus the contractors, all the different providers that are out there, and their relationship to VRT. Remind me what year VRT was formed as the regional transit organization, and the why behind, because as the regional transit organization, these all fall underneath that. They used to all be separate, but can you talk about that just a little bit?
Sure, that's a great question. Let me just very quickly say
Yes.
the Nampa Shopper Shuttle is discontinued. We think we've replaced those rides. Metro Community Services, as I've described, is now a partner. They contract with us to provide the Beyond Access rides in Canyon County. They used to also be a subrecipient, and now that is actually a little bit more robust relationship. So to get back to the big picture, VRT was formed in 1998 by a vote of the residents in both Ada and Canyon County. Canyon County residents actually voted at a higher percentage than Ada County residents to form VRT. Because frankly, I think Canyon County residents have a higher need for that kind of travel, between the commute travel particularly, and they recognize that. In forming the Regional Transportation Authority, which is a political subdivision in state code in Idaho, it gave the authority, the charge, the responsibility to provide public transportation in both of those counties. The next year, they were formed separately because that's how the state statute was written. The next year, they merged and became a two-county system governed by a board that includes both elected officials and appointed officials from the universities and so forth. We are the federal recipient of large urban and small urban funding from the Federal Transit Administration in Ada and Canyon counties. That includes 5307 funding, Section 5307 in the federal code, which is primarily the operations of the bus system. 5339, which is bus and bus facilities funding, more on the capital side, and 5310, which is the funding for older adults and persons with disabilities. 5311 is a federal program for that same funding, older adults and persons with disabilities in rural areas, and we don't receive that funding. There's also the state of Idaho gets some funding outside of the urbanized area in both 5307 and 5339. So it's an odd mix of pots. Our responsibility is to provide all of the public transportation within our urbanized areas in Ada and Canyon County, and to support the transport in the rest of the Ada and Canyon County outside of the urbanized areas using the federal funding that we get. So we provide those services directly, the routes that I talked about, the Beyond Access, and we have subrecipients and contractors who help us provide services to meet some of the other responsibilities that we have that we don't do directly. So Metro is helping with Beyond Access. Treasure Valley Transit is a subrecipient helping with those non-emergency medical rides. We have a number of other subrecipients that do other things in other parts of the county. We're one of only 3 political subdivisions that doesn't have tax or fee authority. And so in the statute, the funding mechanism is that our partners are eligible to contribute money to us to run our services. That's why I'm here today. Talk about how much you could contribute so that we can continue to meet our responsibility, which we think is to make sure that people in Ada and Canyon County, particularly those who have a really hard time either affording transportation or accessing transportation because they can't drive, they can't afford a car, or they're have a disability of some kind. Make sure that they can participate in our economy. I know many of your council members, certainly I as a council member, were always interested in what's the economic return on this. And we're working, frankly, to get some of those numbers. I don't have them yet. We've just accessed a tool that will help us get those, but I don't have them for you today. But if you look around the country with the people who do have those tools and have used them, there is an economic return on this investment, and that is the people who otherwise wouldn't be able to participate, frankly, in your community, get the access to do that, to jobs, to shopping, to social events. Some of them medical trips. Some of them, really, it's the only way they can get around. Others, it's a way. We have a board member, for instance, who grew up in Caldwell and was able to go to college because a bus existed that could get him to the College of Western Idaho. Without that bus, he's told me he would not have gone to college. He just got his doctorate last weekend at Boise State. And So it's those kinds of opportunities that really do have a return on investment. I wish I had those numbers for you, but I don't yet.
Mayor?
Thank you. Yes.
Clarifying question. For TVT, it had showed a price breakdown along the side of the actual plotted routes. Are those costs in addition to what Medicaid is supplementing, or Medicaid supplements all that and that's just a breakdown for us to know?
So the 5307 funding, 5307 funding that that TVT is a subrecipient of is a 50-50 match. So all the other funding that they get, mostly Medicaid, is 50% of that, and the funding they get from us is the other 50%.
So that's what VRT is paying, so it had set a minimum of the $3, no, that was for late night lift, I apologize.
Yeah.
But on the other side, it had shown a certain amount of distance or a certain amount of time. And maybe you can go back
Yeah,
to it.
maybe you go back to the TVT slide. One more, there you go.
So it had shown the round trip
So,
rate.
yeah, this chart is what they charge for the folk. They're able to charge for some of those rides, and that's what this chart is. Most of their rides are just provided because of the Medicaid funding that they have. And so this chart is not that. I don't know if, move forward about 3 or 4, we may have.
I apologize if I'm jumping.
No, I guess I don't. I thought maybe I did. We provide $240,000 a year in 5307 funding to TVT, and they have to find $240,000 a year in local funding, primarily Medicaid reimbursement for the rest of it.
So those riders aren't paying that cost, it's covered through Medicaid. That would just be if I hopped on as a
We
citizen.
can ask, Terry can clarify, because I don't know
Sorry, I
the full
apologize.
answer to that.
That's fine.
Go ahead, if that's okay,
That's
Madam
fine.
Mayor.
That's
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Good morning, Mayor Kling, members of the City Council. I do want to give a little bit of history, if I may, for Treasure Valley Transit. We're a private nonprofit. We were brought in 1992 as the rural public transportation provider in Canyon County under rural dollars. Now fast forward to the 2000 census, and that's when the whole funding system changed. As Elaine was speaking about, Canyon County was no longer considered rural. However, what Treasure Valley Transit continued to do was the non-emergency medical transportation under the Department of Health and Welfare. It gets complicated. That has gone to a statewide broker. So to talk a bit about as a nonprofit, we've provided this service since 1995 under the Department of Health and Welfare. It became the statewide broker. We're doing it today. The total TVT program cost is approximately $1.7 million to provide about 35,000 rides a year. Pre-COVID, it was 46,000 rides. VRT, as a subrecipient, contribute $240,000 to the overall program. So this is where we have 5 buses, 5 vans within Canyon County, and that's where my request came in, which I don't know the vehicles, and that's the service. We have 5 buses, 5 vans that operate Monday through Friday to provide the overall service, which does include the rural areas as well.
So to re-clarify, Mayor, those recipients that are riding on those rides are not paying that additional fee on top of what already is being contributed, or they are?
No, that chart that was mentioned was private pay.
Okay.
We also do dialysis. We have parents who call us, or family members who say, I have a senior who needs medical transportation, and that's the rate that we charge them, and that is not associated with the Medicaid dollars we receive. And I will say on behalf of the Department of Health and Welfare, Treasure Valley Transit is in close talks with them as far as increasing the rate and reimbursement. They understand that they are not meeting the cost of transportation at all, and that's something that's a very slow process. But we're working very closely on it.
Thank you. Thank you. So you do have a document before you today, and that is a request for a capital investment in vehicles that serve Nampa citizens. It's just, we don't pay anything for the service, but that is a capital request. But Councilman Haverfield?
So that question then that I have is, does the VRT then provide vehicles for the partner agencies or transit services that are provided?
We can provide access to federal funding so that they can purchase vehicles. In some cases, in this case, the access to the federal funding to purchase the vehicles is coming through the Idaho Transportation Department. So the request to you, as I understand it, is 20% of the total. The other 80% would come from ITD through that federal funding.
So again, my question then, in looking at your request for capital replacement of 2 buses, 2 vans.
Those are for the ones that we run
I
on the
see.
40, the 42, and the Beyond Access.
Okay, so that's what kind of confused me a little bit. I didn't,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
They
you.
are separate. Okay, so back to your presentation.
Back to me. So, we just wanted to talk about the use case. Nampa residents do travel to work in location along those routes 40, 42, 45, and 150. We know that. We know that Nampa College students travel to College of Western Idaho, Boise State University, College of Idaho, and Northwest Nazarene. We know that Nampa seniors without a disability can now travel to medical appointments, both on the 150 and on the Beyond Access. We know Nampa residents without a disability and who aren't Medicaid eligible can still get to things on both Rides to Wellness and on the 150. If you have a disability, you're eligible for either access or this should have said Beyond Access, not the 150, which is a door-to-door ride. It'll come pick you up at your door. If you have a disability and you're within the access area, we do require you to use the access services. That's a federal requirement, not ours. We can't use the other. If you're outside the access area, then you can use the Beyond Access. Next. Medicaid transportation can happen from Treasure Valley Transit. There's other non-emergency medical transportation providers. They're private sector, but as I mentioned, most of them are not accessible vehicles, so it can be difficult for some people to use them. And any of those folks can also use any VRT service that they qualify for, including the 150 or Beyond Access. Nampa seniors or persons with disabilities can travel on Beyond Access or Metro Community Services, depending on where they're going. And then income-qualified Nampa residents can use Lyft Late Night to get to or from work if they can make the other leg of the trip on a regular service. Next. So funding per service, next. We did have this. I knew this was here somewhere. So here's how much it costs to actually, here's the ridership on the services, first of all. The percent that Nampa provides to cover that ridership and the number of riders that are unique to Nampa in all of those services. Next. And then, as you can see, total those services cost us about $2.5 million. Nampa contributions for just the service, not the capital, not the regional overhead. Last year were $236,000 of that $2.5 million for the services themselves. Other local contributions from other local partners and from advertising that we sell and from fairs equals to $841,000 of that funding that we spend, and then the rest of it is that federal funding that we receive. Next. So in 2023, there were 11 types of transportation services available in Nampa, provided over 100,000 rides. The total cost of those, not just VRT ones, was $3.6 million. the riders within Nampa and the contribution the city of Nampa provided, the average contribution was only about $5.50 per ride. Again, I wish I had the economic return on investment numbers. We're working on those by next year. I intend to have them. We're confident that you're getting a big return on that investment. Next. So last year when we came, we told you that we were about out of ARPA funding. We're now about out of it even more. For a lot of years, VRT has been eating its seed corn, and we're out. We don't have any more. If we continue to do that, our only choice will be to reduce services. While it's not as many rides as I wish it were, and with more funding, it would be more rides. It's rides that are absolutely vital to the people who use them, we think. And losing that service, we think, would be a disservice to your residents. Next. So as we talked last year, you all contributed $471,000 total. Of that, as we noted, a little more than half was for services and the other for capital and regional overhead. We're asking this year, based on what we talked about last year, for $705,000. We'll use $116,000 in what's left of our ARPA funding. As I understand it, your transportation group has indicated that they have some of this funding available. It doesn't have to be general fund funding. And recognizing you have lots of other transportation needs, we do think that that's a reasonable expense of those transportation dollars. And to be totally honest, and covering inflation, which we expect to happen, next year's contribution that we'd be asking for would be $862,000. And this doesn't include, I mentioned that we've been eating our seed corn. It doesn't include some deferred capital one-time funding that I would like to bring back in a separate conversation. I'm going to try to cover that in other ways, but if I can't or can't fully cover it, I may come back and have a conversation about whether there is some one-time funding available so that we can do some deferred maintenance that's much needed on our facilities. Next. So what this money does is provide basic public transportation in your core areas. 43,000 rides unique to Nampa last year. We're leveraging the federal funding and the fares as much as we can. You're getting not just the on-demand anymore, but really more robust fixed route on the boulevard and into downtown Nampa, and more robust connections to the region so that your residents can reach downtown Meridian, downtown Boise, reach into Caldwell. And it recognizes that this is a pretty basic system. There's a lot of growth potential. And over the next year, we're planning to look at what that growth potential is and begin having a conversation about whether it's worth the cost. As we grow, there's just all kinds of costs. So I know this isn't easy. I know, you just had your parks plan. It's a beautiful plan. I hope you can do it all. But I really, really hope you can support this funding, because without it, we will have to cut services. I don't have any more seed corn. And I don't want to cut services because your residents really need it. So thank you.
Mayor Clay.
Before you say anything, I want to make a comment real quickly. First of all, I think this is the best presentation we've had. Thank you. It was thorough. Mark, thank you for working with staff. Thank you for the work to provide us the detail. Just for council to know, we have not increased the general fund budget request. It is the same that it has been the last couple of years. and we've left it the same. The difference is funded out of transportation, so there's no increase in our general fund. And I think that's really important for us to know. The request, the bus request from Treasure Valley Transit, that would be taken up during our capital discussion. So we will include this in our capital discussion, which will be coming, that decision will be in the budget workshops in July, but it'll be presented, our capital budget, on June 20th in our next workshop, just like this. The entire workshop will be capital. The 5-year CIP that Mark has been working on, and then our capital. So that's what our next council workshop is. So I just want there to be clarity. I do appreciate the fact that you gave us a 3-year estimate. You're staying true to that. We know where we were, where we are, and where we're going, and that's very, very helpful for us to see. So thank you for that. So we've got about 6 minutes. Councilman Rodriguez.
Well, Mayor, you just answered 3 of the 4
I
questions.
had a feeling, that's why I wanted to, yeah.
But I still have just one more, though, to get it over with. Elaine, doesn't funding increase based on population from your grants? Or has that been cut off too?
It's a unique formula for transit that is based both on population and the amount of service that you provide. Because service in Nampa and Caldwell, frankly, is not very robust, that skews that formula in a way that makes it so that we don't get very much growth in that federal funding. The other piece of it is that on the operating side, even if we get more federal funding, we still have to come up with 50% of that funding locally in order to use it to operate. And in Ada County, it's only 20% of the total funding is available for that 50%. So in Ada County, they pay an even higher percentage of the operating, almost full freight. So actually, you guys are getting a pretty good deal on the operating at the 50/50, and our funding from the federal government, although it's increased a little bit, we frankly can't use all of it in Canyon County because we don't have enough local match to use it all.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor,
Thank you. Yes.
a couple of just final questions for me. Actually, one thing for Amy or for you, Mayor, if we could get copies of the master site plan presentation along with Elaine's presentation.
Sure. It's in our packet.
I didn't see it online. Was it
It is.
available to us now?
It's in our packet, unless you tweaked anything. in your
We
PowerPoint.
tweaked it a little bit and added a few things, so your tech does have it on his desktop. He could
We'll
share it.
resend, but the original PowerPoint, and there's a huge document with it, is in our packet, and it's got all the numbers and everything in it.
I didn't see that when I pulled it up, but, so if that's available to us, that answers that question. And then you said the statistics, the updated statistics will be made available, ride statistics at some point soon.
So the American Public Transportation Association, which we rejoined when I came on board, has an economic return on investment tool. And we're working to be able to use that to provide you some economic return on investment numbers. We don't have them yet. I don't know for sure when they're going to be available.
Now, that's the economic investment. That's the economic piece of it. The numbers are all in the documents that are online. You'll see them. They're all in there. She had it in this presentation, but there's also a separate document that is a Word style. It's a
There's
PDF.
a memo that has
a
it
memo,
broken out.
and it has all of this information in it, and so it is in our packet. So you'll be able to find that.
Okay, so that's a packet that's available online on the city website?
Yeah, did we email that? I think we emailed it out too. Did we didn't?
Mark did.
Mark did. So Mark emailed it to us
So Mark is
last
the author?
week, and then it's also in the packet online. Yeah.
So that'll help me, because I was looking just to understand Route 150, and if it was a combination of other routes, or if it was unique into itself, and I think it looked like it was a combination of like 40 and 42. So that, I'll just do some self-study to get up to speed on what's there. I work with the development community quite often, and it's nice to know where the multimodal accesses are as far as how that works in their favor. So all of that's very useful information for
Yeah,
me.
downtown Nampa is going to get many more stops than they had previously, using some of the hours that previously were used on the 43. So we're confident that that's going to attract more riders.
Thank you.
And then Mark will be available to answer questions. So following today, if council has any questions, and I'll just say this regarding our budget process. As you are all aware, we have the Wednesday workshops that are taking place each Wednesday. Then we've got the council prep this, and then the next one. And then after that, when you get your budget book, please reach out to the departments for questions, because the questions should all come before we ever get to our budget workshop. We should have no surprises at the budget workshop. We should be pretty well done. So we've got lots of opportunities to address questions, and so they all should be addressed prior to, really before the end of June. All the questions should be addressed, but Mark Stour has been the one working with VRT. Let's route our questions to Mark. Mark will work with us to ensure that there's any clarity that's needed, because he may be able to answer, but then he'll work with your staff to answer
Mark's
questions.
been really helpful for us to be able to route those questions through so that we can give you a package of answers and not one-offs.
Yes.
So if you can work through him and we'll work with him, that would be great. I'm always available if anyone wants to talk. Please, feel free to contact me.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'm so sorry, just one question.
Yep.
And I don't know how to address you, so I'll go with Ms. Clegg. With the
You can call me Elaine. It's
Elaine,
great.
thank you. We went and talked about this at Chapala, so I think we're on Elaine and
Thank you so
Sebastian status here. But my question is in regard being conscientious and sensitive to the whole picture. If we did not fund this, and this was something that we did not approve, what would that do to VRT in the whole valley, not having Nampa a part of this?
So
As clear as we could be,
Yeah,
just-
that's an interesting question, because it would hurt our hearts at VRT, but it wouldn't hurt us. What it would hurt is your residents, because we wouldn't be able to provide service. We're going to continue to exist. We're a political subdivision of the state. We're dependent on your contributions to be able to provide the services, and we think we provide really good services, and we think it really benefits your residents, but we can't do it without the local match. And as I mentioned, we've been eating our seed corn to keep doing it despite not getting as much in contributions as we knew we needed, and I've got no seed corn left.
Thank you.
Okay. We are at 9 o'clock. Unless there's a burning question, I think we'll conclude. Excellent presentation. Really appreciate the work that
Thank
went
you for
into
inviting
this.
us and giving us this much time. It's really helpful to be able to have the conversation.
It's important, very important. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So just a reminder, council, we have executive session on Monday night at 5. We have a council meeting at 5:30, and it'll be a long night. We do have one item on our agenda, and we anticipate a lot of testimony. So I think Kim has reached out to you just with a couple of questions. You might get back to her. And at that, I'd stand for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.